pray. Our Father in heaven, I pray you give me, and that your Spirit will be with me and hold my hand while I read these words. Sit next to those listening, comfort our hearts and souls, and bring the love that only you can bring. In your name I pray. Amen. I'm profoundly grateful for the incredible support you have shown my family and my father. The word eulogy is an interesting word. Personally, I've never liked it or the sound of it. Probably because every time you hear it, it's someone giving a eulogy at a funeral. But you'd be surprised to know that the Greeks use the word every day. It comes from the word eulogia, which means both blessing and praise. I like the word more now, especially if you pronounce it like the Eastern Greeks do, eulogia. I especially feel the great honor and weight of pronouncing eulogia, praise and blessing over my father. Your presence here and your prayers, compassion and the love are eulogias, not only to my dad, but to us all. Arthur George Ellis was born February 3rd, 1954 in San Bernardino, California, to Marjorie Helen Reddick Ellis and Arthur Cox Ellis. He was taken home by Jesus on November 7th, 2025, in West Valley City, leaving behind his wife of 44 years. Arthur is survived by his wife Karen and his sons Josh and Thomas Ellis, and his daughters Jennifer Davis and Andrea Carlson, and his wonderful sons-in-law George Davis and Daniel Carlson, as well as favorite daughter-in-law Miriam Ellis. Arthur's grandsons Daniel, Aston, Lachlan, Declan, Kieran, Bryson. His granddaughters Alexis, Gwyneth, and Rosalind, and Scarlett. His great-grandchildren Violet and Eloise. And Eloise was born 5 days after Arthur's passing and never got to meet her great-grandfather. They are all a testament to the legacy he leaves behind. In addition, Arthur cherished many spiritual sons and daughters and grandchildren who brought him immense joy. His beloved sister Sharon Jensen and his brother-in-law Keith Jensen, plus numerous nieces and nephews, were all very dear to him. Arthur's family also extends to many more sisters and brothers, nieces and nephews from his wife's side, whom he considered his own. Family was everything to Arthur. Arthur was the second of 4 children, born to his parents. The family experienced tragedy early on with the loss of Arthur's eldest sister, Jeannie, who sadly passed away in infancy. Growing up, Arthur shared his childhood with his younger brother, Roger, and his youngest sister, Sharon. Roger, Arthur's younger brother, was a significant presence in his life until tragedy struck. One story in 1984, where Roger lost his life to the Wilburn mine disaster at the age of 28, marking another profound loss for his family. Sharon was the youngest of his siblings and was fortunate to have Arthur by her side throughout his life. Cherished the bond that they maintained for all of his days. I began writing this the night that my dad passed, and throughout this process I have been praying that the words I shared will truly honor him and reflect the depth of my love and respect for my father. I want to tell you about my dad, not the polished version, not the highlight reel, but the real man, the one who could be stubborn as a mule, ornery as a badger, gentle as a lamb, and protective as a bear. The one who wrestled with demons and still managed to love fiercely. The one who didn't always get it right, but never stopped trying. The man who fought the monsters under his kids' beds and their closets, while battling the human monsters in this world. Arthur was not a saint, he was a fighter, a man who bore scars, some visible, some buried deep. He had a laugh that could fill the room, and a silence that could empty it. He was complicated, putting it mildly, and that's what made him beautiful. I love my father with all my heart, and I will cherish every moment we had. Every word, every laugh, every argument, every screaming match, and every tear. Each of these moments hold deep meaning for me, and it is critical that I honor him in this way he deserves. Although it is common for eulogies to be painted in bright colors, filled with rainbows, puppy dogs, and daisies, while avoiding mentioning the storms and the darkness, that is not the approach I will take. Many speeches elevate loved ones to saintly heights, placing them on pedestals that never occupied during their lives. My tribute will not do that. I cannot truly explain who my dad was, nor the man he became, without acknowledging the challenges he faced. To honor his memory authentically, I must speak honestly about the darkness he endured, and the imperfections he carried. My father always told things without sugarcoating or embellishment, and I have inherited that gift in abundance. I will share the story of Arthur's life, the life God witnessed. This is not a tale of a man who always walked perfectly with God, but rather a testament to a man in which God was always walking with him. It is the very life that we all were privileged to experience with the man we love so deeply. He taught me that love isn't always easy. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's just showing up when you have to run away. It can be ugly, and it can be beautiful, even if the beauty isn't seen or understood until years later. My dad showed up for us. He showed up for all of us. Even when he was hurting, even when it was ugly, even when he didn't have the words for comfort. And regrettably, there were days and things that he missed. Graduations and weddings, funerals and other occasions. And when that happened, he regretted it deeply. It hurt him for one reason or another. He couldn't be there when he wanted to so badly. There were days when he was the storm, and there were days when he was the shelter. And through it all, God never left his side, even when Dad couldn't see it. Even when he doubted, even when he fell, God was there, and I believe that now more than ever. I miss him. I miss him so much it kills me. But I also feel him in the quiet, and in the laughter, in the stubbornness that runs in our veins. When I hear a song he loved, when I look at my siblings and see pieces of him in each of us, and when I see his grandbabies beginning their lives. This isn't goodbye, Daddy. This is thank you. Thank you, Dad, for being real, for being flawed, for being brave, for loving us with everything you had. You didn't have to be perfect. You just had to be you. And we love you for it. How can you truly describe a person in their entirety, especially when Arthur and George Ellis? How do you capture the essence of someone you love in a few simple words given at the end of their life? If I attempted to say everything, it would take days, and even then I believe it would only begin to understand a few feet of the depth of who my father was. There are qualities, feelings, and emotions that we simply don't have words for. Still, I will do my best with the words we have of our subpar language to summarize my father's remarkable character. My father was not an easy man to love. If he was angry, you knew it, without question or doubt, and so did the neighbors. Tracy and Shireen, on behalf of my family, I want to give you our sincerest apologies. He had a temper that was unequaled by most. He could have taught college-level course on profanity and its origin. He could yell and scream at octaves that would make Celine Dion stammer. And make all the dogs in the neighborhood howl and bark in reply. He was also not a stranger to a fistfight either. But I will, however, spare the details of those stories. Most of us were present anyway for them. He was an opinionated man who was hard pressed on changing his mind. He was erratic after all, on his mother's side. His uncle Jerry, who married his mother's sister, Edna, had a wise saying, "What a erratic doesn't know ain't worth knowing." His subtle way of saying, "What a bunch of stubborn know-it-alls." My father was an unselfish man who gave to others. His generosity was not limited by distance or inconvenience. If someone needed help, he was there, no matter what. He once traveled hundreds of miles to assist a cousin with car trouble, arriving with necessary parts to fix the problem. Himself, if someone needed help with their electricity or something else, he would help. He would give to family that had nothing, once giving to cousins of mine our Christmas presents when they had any Christmas. He would, of course, replace them, but we had to wait. Acts like this were not exceptional for him. They were simply who he was, my father. Yes, he had a temper, and yes, he said things that hurt all the way to the bone. And did things that he shouldn't have, but haven't we all? But he had something far greater, his love. It was his biggest part. His hugs were enveloping. His I love yous resonated with the feeling of love. And that was the fuel he operated on. To provide all he could for those that meant the world to him. He was also a very forgiving man, especially in his later years, when he couldn't remember what he had to forgive. He was a hard worker, never likely to sit down if something needed to be done. He was simple, as we all are. But as it is written, love covers a multitude of sins. My father's life was not an easy one. It was not one for the faint of heart, to say the least. It wasn't free of heartache, pain, abuse, severe trauma, or tragedy. Even as a young child at the age of 2, he was stricken with tuberculosis and hospitalized and nearly died. His auntie, Edith, didn't accept that. She was bound and determined to save her nephew, and save him she did. It was her cooking that saved him from what the doctors felt was a guaranteed death. I can attest her cooking is what saved him. It was the only food he would eat. Her food was literally made not just with her love, but with her entire soul. And I have yet to eat anything that came close to it. The spoons of love saved my father. The first time my dad's life was spared. Fire story number 1. My dad liked to play with fire. I would have to say both literally and figuratively. He liked to play with fire. To him, the flames were something he found beautiful and dazzling. One day when he was 6 years old, he was in the wooden shed in his backyard of his house. He was lighting newspapers on fire. He had succeeded in creating a great blaze. Before he knew it, the shed was engulfed in flame. Thick black smoke filled the shed, so that Arthur could not see or breathe. He was alone when this happened. There were no friends, with him no adults, just Arthur. He panicked and he couldn't breathe. He couldn't see to get out. And suddenly out of nowhere, a hand pushed his head and him to the floor, guiding him to the door. The shed was ablaze, and the fire had spread to the field next door. Arthur looked everywhere. There was no one. There was no human around that could have pushed his head and guided him to safety. That was the second time where my dad's life had been spared. The race now couple of years later, when Sharon was about 4, Arthur and Roger got brand new PF flyers. The finest shoes ever to grace God's green earth, at least according to every child who ever wore them. And naturally that meant only one thing, a race. A race around the house at full speed, bragging rights on the lead line, and of course the ability to tease each other incessantly. Because in a child's mind, speed isn't about the runner, it's all about the shoes. The magic lives in the results. The course was simple. Start at the front of the house, and the first to get to the back to the front, the house won. They lined up, each carrying the imaginary crank of the starting pistol in their heads, and then boom, they were off. Tearing around the house in opposite directions, each convinced their PF flyers would carry them to glory. It's Arthur. No, it's Roger. Wait, Arthur again. It was neck and neck until disaster. They collided head-on at full speed in a spectacular wreck of limbs, faces, and pride. No fatalities, thank God, but the aftermath was brutal. Arthur ended up with a concussion and hospitalized. Roger's front teeth pushed clean through his upper lip. His mother having to pull the lip forward to get the teeth to go back behind him. Both boys sported black eyes, bloody faces, and likely a few cuts courtesy of each other's teeth. Roger also took home a permanent souvenir, a scar on his forehead that stayed with him his whole life. The attempted kidnapping. Not long after Arthur's father passed away, the family was living in a modest apartment in San Bernardino, right next door to the bar where his mother, Marjorie, worked as a waitress. She was the best waitress I've ever had. One afternoon, the 3 kids were outside doing what kids do, playing, laughing, and living in their own world, When Sharon was approached by a man and a woman parked nearby in a motorhome, they struck up a conversation with her, offering her candy, coaxing her to come with them. And before anyone realized what had happened, they had Sharon and were walking away with her, away from Arthur and Roger. But Arthur and Roger saw them, and they didn't hesitate. Arthur barked at Roger and told him to hold Sharon tight while they sprinted into the bar to use the phone. He called their Uncle John and Aunt Edith, and they immediately set out to come home. Arthur didn't wait. At just 12 or 13 years old, he was already built like a grown man. And he had the heart to match. He stormed back outside and got right in the couple's faces, unleashing a verbal barrage that could have knocked down a wall. He shoved the man away from his siblings, standing between them like a fortress. When Uncle John and Aunt Edith arrived, the couple had fled. This is a perfect snapshot of who Arthur was. Fearlessly, protectively, and unshakably loyal, and ready to fight for his family without a second thought. Family wasn't important to him, it was everything. The miracle on water. One day during a family trip to Yosemite, my dad was captivated by the beauty of the lake. The water looked so inviting, so serene, and he couldn't resist the urge to swim. The shoreline wasn't crowded. He had a few people scattered in the water, and several of his cousins were there too. Calvin was swimming, looking completely at peace, like the lake was a person's home. And Cindy was nearby, likely because a few of her siblings were as well. Seeing Calvin floating so calmly, my dad thought, this looks amazing. So he made the way to the edge of the lake, and without hesitation, left it. Big mistake. The lake, it turned out, was a liar. It looked warm and inviting, but it was glacial and absolutely bone-chilling. My dad shot up out of the water like he had been electrocuted, making shouts of shock, freaking out, clamoring out, like a cat would being dropped into the lake. He made it back to the shore as he would have remembered it, doing it all without getting on the surface of the water again. Not once being submerged. When retelling his story to my mom, always say that he was the second man in history to walk on water. In this case, it was most likely sprinting across. The whole family lost it. They were doubling over, laughing so hard they could barely breathe. It became one of those stories that lived on. Part legend, part comedy, part heart. Tragically, Arthur's family knew the pain of losing ones so young in their life. Arthur himself lost his father just 10 days after Arthur's 11th birthday in February of 1965. His dad was a professional tree trimmer. And died in a devastating accident. He fell from a tree while working. That day became a permanent scar on the family's memory, and everything changed. Arthur's mother was so shattered. The love of her life was gone, and her grief. She searched desperately for someone to fill that void. But her pursuit of another love, something equal or something even remotely close to what she had, ended up wounding her children in ways she could never see.
You need your diaper changed.
She began leaving Arthur and Roger and Sharon home alone. Sometimes for a day, sometimes for several. And in her absence, my father, still just a child himself, stepped into the role of protector, provider, and surrogate parent. When he could, he walked his siblings to their grandmother's house, or to an aunt or uncles that were available. And they often traveled miles on foot, and more often than not, they did it hungry. My dad had to grow fast, and faster than any child should. He carried the weight of becoming the man he knew his father would want him to be, and the man his younger siblings so desperately needed. Only God knows the difficult, even heartbreaking things he endured to uphold that role. The choices he made, the burdens he bore, the sacrifices no one saw. He did it all to protect them, to provide for him, to honor his father's memory, and to hold his fractured family together. He never made life easy on himself, partly because he was stubborn and had a mouth that didn't believe in sugarcoating anything. He even seasoned his words with a little extra spice. And if he didn't say it out loud, his face did it for him. And either way, you caught the message. That fire he poured down into us kids. And I think he was proud of that. In his own way, saying, take that world. And oh, he meant it. I'd catch the smirk on his face whenever one of his kids let him have it that someone else wouldn't. Ella style. Excuse me. Where I'd overhear him and my mom laughing about it after we had gone to bed. Sure, we were grounded or punished, but underneath it all, he was proud. Even prouder when he saw it in his grandbabies. Not just the stubborn streak or the sharp tongue, but the strength behind it. The kind of strength that says, I won't back down. I'll speak my word. I'll stand my ground. How they met. It all started in December 1980. A Christmas party in Fillmore, Utah. A joint shindig with the employees of Fillmore Products and the law offices of Dexter Anderson. My mom was there, probably expecting some punch, polite small talk, and a white elephant gift that didn't suck. What she didn't expect was my Aunt Sharon, who had matchmaking on her brain and a mission in her heart. In the middle of a party game, because nothing says romance like competitive charades, Sharon leaned over and asked my mom if she'd be willing to go on a blind date with her brother, my dad. My mom, ever the realist, gave a firm no thank you. She didn't believe in blind dates. Too awkward, too unpredictable. Too many guys thinking dinner and a movie meant a drive-thru and a VHS. But Sharon was persistent. She kept circling back throughout the night, like a yenta on a mission. Come on, just one date. She'd say, he's a really nice guy. My mom finally gave me into the holiday spirits, said fine. If he agrees to go on a date with me, I'll do it. Well, lo and behold, he said yes. And a few days later, on Christmas night, they went to see Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. And that's because nothing says romance on a first date like intergalactic war, daddy issues, and a guy in a black helmet saying, I am your father. After the movie, they went to the Paradise Inn for dinner, the most upscale place one could go to in film